Hello, hello, hello. Hi everyone, and as usual, I actually forget what episode we're on, but it doesn't matter. So, for everyone that has joined, thank you. For everyone yet to join, welcome when you do. Um, Tonight, I have the absolute pleasure of being with Anastasia Lapik, and for myself and Anastasia, we're what, 3 years now?
I think so, yeah.
It's roughly around about 3 years, isn't it? And in actual fact, it actually resonates with the topic of this evening because when we had met Anastasia, that was probably when I was trying to piece things together about what I was going to do and how I was moving forward. And I was actually moving out of an identity that I had developed for myself over all the years. So tonight's episode is the identity trap. And it's really about unraveling or starting to unravel the masks that we wear. And yeah, what's interesting is I think in one of my poems I'd started writing a long, long time ago, I'd actually shared the fact that we all do have a tendency to put on different hats, if you like, and in between that, we kind of get lost, or we start to really we don't know what hat we're wearing any longer, and then things are starting to weave into other things, and then you actually just become a wee bit lost, and that had actually triggered someone. But Anastasia, you and I met for lunch a few weeks back, and we were having a really heart and soul full or led conversation around about the Hall of Mirrors and identity. But before we go into that, I'm going to shut up and I'll hand it over you to Anastasia. If you can give us just a wee introduction to yourself, please.
Yeah, well, I think this topic is just so poignant right now in my life, also, Lindsay, so I'm really excited to talk about this as well. I'm Anastasia Lapik, and I'm very local in Scotland, not too far from Lindsay. Yeah, which is amazing because we met online. So Lindsay originally joined one of my programs. I'm a business coach and expert in helping people design transformational courses, memberships, and launch them. And that's how me and Lindsay met each other. And I know she's changed so much as well, just since that first time we met. Like even like how you are, your energy, your trust in yourself, right? Your confidence, and obviously the business that you're leading as well is just like blowing my mind. And the book, right? Like you've shifted so many identities just in a short period of time. And I think this is true for me since I've become an entrepreneur as well. I've gone from like one identity to the next and the next and the next. And now I've been helping more of my clients also, not just help them with the business, but also with the identity shifts, because my true belief is like when we can change who the person is at those belief system levels, that the actions that they take become an inevitable consequence of who they are and the transformation that they've gone through, rather than something that they have to like force themselves to do with carrot and stick, you know, through guilt and shame and whacking your way through life, right? Like do this, otherwise you're not good enough, which is not sustainable ways to really change yourselves, change your habits. So yeah, I'm so excited to talk about this. I think this is going to be a transformational conversation.
Yeah, thanks very much, Anastasia. It's been a hell of a journey, but even when I reflect back on that as well, it started a long, long time ago, and I think it started when I did my degree. But I didn't know it was going to unfold into what it's unfolded into, and it's been such a crazy ass journey. Yeah, sometimes it's felt like I've been holding on with the skin of my teeth, because it felt like when I was going through what I went through, that I was kind of being ripped apart. And then when I lost my mum and my brother as well, like that just threw me into, a really powerful transformational stage in my life. And I think for me, like experiencing that, it allowed me to use everything that was going on with me and turn my pain into power. And I'm not meaning power in the sense that I'm all high and mighty and powerful and stuff, but I actually started to just actually put things in the places that they were meant to be. And that's what was powerful. So in speaking about identity, you touched on something there. And you touched on childhood. Yeah. So when I first started becoming aware, and this is a reflective piece as well, Anastasia, because it's through lived experience, and I wonder how it was for you, right? But I was from a very young age, I was very aware of family dynamics, right? And what that looked like to me. I sensed love and care. And I actually recognised in experiencing that where there was gaps. So what I almost became when I was a child, like, because I never ever felt like I truly fit in anywhere, and I realised over time that I was never meant to fit in anyway. But it was almost like I always had to change to whatever environment that I was going into. So that for me, I started developing all of my coping identities from a very young age. When did you first become aware of all the different identities that you had, and how has that shaped you into the person that you became today?
Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing that as well. I feel like our childhood sometimes can be a bit of a traumatic, vulnerable, triggering place to
Yeah,
go into. And, my earliest memory of my childhood and myself in this situation where for the first time I looked at my parents from this like bird's eye view and realized like, whoa, this is not fair. And I was watching, I was with my mum and dad before they broke up and got divorced when I was about 4 years old. And I remember very viscerally laying in the bed. We only had one room flat, so there was nowhere else to put me apart from in the same bed as them. And they were watching Dracula on TV, and I was meant to be asleep. And of course, I was a kid. I was not asleep. I was like peeking at TV, and they noticed. And my dad got so angry at me, and my mom. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but they put me in the corner, in the dark corner at the end of the corridor, right next to the front door. And I remember hysterically crying in that moment, and that feeling of unfairness. Like, how could somebody who loves you, do that to you? And it's very fascinating because this feeling of being rejected, being unloved in that moment, and that feeling of unfairness, of being mistreated and not being just loved unconditionally, like stuck with me
yeah,
for the rest of my life. And I remember very viscerally having that perspective as early as 3.5, knowing that this is not right. That's not how a child should be treated. This is unfair. This is not my fault. And on the other hand, on the subconscious level, because of this traumatic experience, having still developed this maladaptive guilt and shame that there must be something inherently wrong with me for them to treat me in this way. And I think for me, this inner duel between these two identities, of one having that higher perspective from really young age, and seeing when things were unjust and unfair, and seeing when my parents were not in their highest alignment and that they were in their patterns, and yet the guilt and the shame that I still carried and resistance that came. I was never a good girl. I was a rebel. I was pushed away. Anyone would tell me to do anything, I'll be like, no boundaries. I'm not doing it. So for me, that was my way. And my whole identity got based around this, to the point where now I'm met with this version of me that resists everything, sometimes even things which are good for me, just because someone tells me to do it. Even if I tell myself to do it, this inner fight all the way from childhood up until now.
But you want to know though, you're aware of it, and it was funny because even when we were having a conversation, you'd actually mentioned that to me, and there was something that I'd mentioned to you, and it was like, you should maybe try this, and I actually seen your body. You just, because I was telling you, I was more in my head. I wasn't telling you what to do. I was sharing what I would do, but to you, it was like I was telling you what to do, and you actually seen it happen. I seen it happen right in front of my eyes. And another time for me as well. So it's crazy the stuff that you pull through. Being aware of that. See, before I go on to the next bit, right? So if you're aware of that now, how does that still have a lingering effect on you, Anastasia? Because through awareness, it gives us an opportunity to surrender and let go of that. So how is it still playing out for you?
Yeah. Well, I think the mechanisms of guilt and shame, like my family are very demanding. They have always been. And there was like, they're always right. There was never an apology for doing anything wrong from my family members. And their parenting methods were sometimes, now from my perspective, extreme. So I developed this inherent sense of guilt and shame when I didn't do what they expected me to. Even though I didn't do it, I would resist it, but I'd still feel that emotion. And I think it's that emotion that it's still lingering within me, that even when I do resist and I'm really aware of this pattern, there is this sense of like, no, we're not going to do it. Some like victimhood, this not willing to let it go, because that was the way that I kept myself safe from the expectation and the pressure. And on the other hand, the other part is still feeling the guilt and the shame of not being the good enough daughter, good enough granddaughter, not good enough because I was not doing what they would tell me to do, or because I was not willing to take responsibility for their emotions. And I think that's still the dynamic that doesn't fully allow, for me at least, still working on this. It's in layers.
Yeah, well, do you know what there is? And there's many layers. There is many layers, and especially when you go on the journey like what we offer. I think what you do though is you build up a resiliency. So you build up an emotional intellect and emotional awareness to the point where there is a level of resiliency so that it doesn't affect you. And there's one thing that I say to everybody, like when you're going on this journey, everything's about observation and it's about finding the lesson in the things that you're doing. So there's no such thing as perfect. So if you're arguing and you're even asking yourself these reflective questions I'm asking throughout this session, be gentle on yourself and look at yourself with compassion as well. So always start to unravel as an observer, look for the lessons, don't attach, and make sure that you bring a sprinkle of compassion on your journey when you're doing that. And it's interesting because I say to people as well, like, you're never healed. There's not a magic cape or a wand that comes along and ta-da, an abracadabra, and you're healed. You just have different levels that you go through. And even for me, like, I've always put myself into high performing jobs. And I didn't even recognize this either until I'd started doing what I did. But everything that I was doing, I was trying to prove my worth. And even when that came to being a mum, even when it came to being a wife, like, I would overgive all the time to feel worthy. And the jobs that I had and in my career, I would like go to the ends of the earth, to the point that one of my managers says to me, Lindsay, you give your customers such a white glove service that you're setting everyone else up to fail. And I was actually offended by that. But then I actually recognised what she was saying. But I've got myself into such a rhythm, like, I'm hard to keep up with. But that's the thing as well. It's when it's looking at it and going, where have I mistaken performance as belonging? So that's a nice question to ask yourself if you feel like you're caught up in that need to give, need to give, need to do.
Yeah.
It's sitting with yourself and saying, when did I begin to mistake my performance for belonging?
Yeah. I love that question. And I think there's so many different ways in which we give a power away, like, because I feel the same way. And yet for me, it manifested in a slightly different way. I was never an overgiver because of this rebel resistant nature that I had. I was never a caretaker. And yet I had all the same emotions of guilt and shame and feeling responsible for other people. I was just not doing it. But for me, it was manifested in a different way. For me, it manifested as the need to fix everyone outside of myself so that they can finally take responsibility for themselves. Only if I could get them to understand me and heal and do the things, they'll take the pressure off me. They'll finally realize that it's not fair. Poor me, not fair to put all this pressure on me.
So you're trying to prove yourself, really?
In a different way, right? And keep myself safe by trying to control everyone else around me. And I think these are the different mechanisms that we have, right? To either like caretake and take responsibility for other people by doing for them, or the opposite, trying to change them so they don't need you anymore, so you don't have to do and have all the pressure on you, you know?
It's so interesting, isn't it? It's so interesting. Anastasia, have you ever had a moment when you looked at your life and realised that you've become someone that you didn't recognise?
Yeah. Gosh, you know, like when I first started my spiritual journey, it was like a huge awakening for me. I was at the university at the time doing God knows what with my body, you know, partying hard, hedonistic lifestyle. I remember thinking like, this is it. This is life. This is what life is all about. Just having fun and enjoying yourself. And when I had my spiritual awakening, I've gone so deep into the dark night of the soul. You know, I got really into meditation. I got really into yoga, and I became vegan. And that was my identity for many, many years, where I was vegan for 7 years. I was a yogi, bare feet with purple hair, traveling the world, no care in life, just connecting to the above. And then something happened. I've gone through a really traumatic experience in my life. And overnight, my whole identity collapsed, because I recognized that even this spiritual longing and this spiritual yogi, spiritual girl identity was still built on this need to prove myself. If I'm spiritual, if I'm a yogi, if I'm vegan, then I'm finally good enough. So when I've gone through this traumatic experience, this layer was like shattered. And all of a sudden I saw through it. And I got so dark and deep into depression that I just felt no need to perform anymore. I was just in this like 0 point, like I didn't care anymore. I didn't care like I had to be spiritual or yogi. I started eating meat again, and I started to do all those things because I didn't feel the need to try and be somebody anymore. And yet I lost everything that I was, and there was no more core identity. And I looked at myself after COVID happened. This was all just before COVID happened.
That's got lots to answer for.
I was like, oh my God, like, who have I become? Like, I've put on 15 kilograms. I'm eating meat. I'm not meditating anymore. From teaching yoga several times a week, I'm not teaching yoga anymore. From being super like connected and intuitive, I've lost it all. I got into business, into my masculine doing, practical energy, and I couldn't recognize myself anymore. It was so painful. It felt like I lost something that on one hand maybe was created from a place of I'm not good enough, I need to perform, to be validated, to be spiritual, to feel good enough. And yet it gave me a sense of stability in life and a sense of identity, and it was good for me. And now I was like a shell of myself, and it's taking me I'm still in the process of now rebuilding the spiritual side of me and merging it with the more grounded entrepreneurship, energy, and bringing it together in a way that's now more about how can I love myself so much that I choose these things for myself from a place of love, from a place of desire to look after myself, not from a place of like, I'm not good enough if I don't do those things, and needing to be validated, needing to be like spiritual enough so I'm accepted and I'm worthy of existence on this planet. Like, no more of that.
I think that's a big thing as well within this community. There's a hell of a lot of judgment. And I think as well, or I believe that like a lot of people, and I think this is what helps shape identities as well, is other people's perception of what it is that you are or what it is that's going on with you. Not that they care enough to come and ask if you're okay or anything like that, but you do have the whole skepticism, if you like, around what it is. And even the word spiritual is a trigger, because they've automatically associated that with somebody that wears white robes and goes out and sings hallelujah or howls at the moon or whatever. They've already got these personas, if you like, of what it is to be. And I keep saying to people, like, spiritualism, it's not about anything else or anyone else's knowledge. It's about your lived experience and your knowledge of you. And by the way, everybody else's opinion doesn't matter. They're like assholes. Everyone's got one. And I'm sorry that I've said that out loud. But it's true. It's like when you're stepping into yourself, in an essence, you're actually becoming spiritual. And when you're led by yourself and yourself first, you're becoming spiritual. It doesn't mean getting up religiously at certain times of the day and meditating or eating in a certain way or dressing in a certain way. So that again as well. And that probably rippled through my childhood, the feeling of inadequacy. So always having, again, to prove myself. It's actually quite similar. But then what I realised as well, and I didn't realise until I was a grown-ass adult, is that through me thinking, right? Through me thinking that this is how everybody perceived me, that caused me to act in a certain way.
Yeah.
So what that actually did is there was even non-verbal cues that triggered a response or a reaction in me. So in speaking about sneaky triggers, and it's the ones that hit you in your gut that bring up these huge emotions, from something that could be potentially so small to something that could be cataclysmic. Can you share a moment again where you've been deeply triggered, and this is the energetic bit of it, Anastasia, where you've been triggered and then realised that you were tapping into an old wound? I know that you've shared some stuff, but yeah.
I mean, what is identity at the core? It's just the belief systems that we hold about ourselves and the stories that we continue to tell ourselves through those lenses, right? Through those belief systems. And these stories are usually just what you've heard from other people, just what you've observed. But because these stories are so deeply connected to the emotions, and that when the trauma happens, there is this connection that happens between the story, right? Between the experience and between the emotion, that sometimes as soon as there is even a remnants of that experience, the emotions just start to arise, and it's not something you can control unless you've obviously shifted and rewired that. Until you've done that, it's going to keep coming up, and that's what we call the trigger, right? And that they do come from our identity. That's the most interesting thing, is like our identity, part of it are certain traumas and triggers, right? And belief systems and stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves. So for me, realizing that, like, even what you said about words, like for me, the word God was a trigger, because I grew up in a religious family where I identified God with Christianity, from having to stand in church for 5 hours with my grandmother, not wanting to be there, from like a really dogmatic view of what it means to be pure and spiritual, of having fear of hell, fear of judgment. I grew up with an awful fear of judgment from God. I literally to believe in childhood that God is sat there watching me and judging me, and I'm going to go to hell. And because of that, it created this huge story around how actually I don't deserve good things to happen to me because I'm a bad child. And I mean, that was my story, and that was a huge trigger for me. So every time I would hear the word God, I'd be like, no, I can't use it. God, universe, self, all that is always bad God. And I had to rewire my belief systems and stories around God. And I think it was the same with other words and situations, as I realized like I had the power to bring it back into neutral and realize that these are just stories. That's not what's actually happening. The meaning you give to situations and words and experiences, they're just that, your definitions. They're made up by other people. You have the power. At any given moment, you can redefine them, and you can then tell yourself a completely different story about this. And that's how we actually shift our identity as well. Through storytelling.
It's a huge process though, isn't it? It's something that you can kind of share, and it sounds easy, but it's not. It's a whole process. And even one of those deep introspections into like your triggers, your emotions, why you feel the way that you do, that is not something that actually happens overnight. That is something that happens, and it's not public either. It's very, very private. But it's an opportunity for you to actually start to at least unpick and unravel some of these things that have helped us, that's helped us become a certain individual, or act in a certain way. Even if you start to look at the behaviours, well, what's the emotion that's behind it? We were volunteering, and I actually did storytelling for the kids to tap into their emotions and start to use their emotions as guides. I don't think there's enough of that either, because I think even as a child, and I actually sat with my two daughters myself and went, I can remember, like, even when you were younger, like, if you were crying, I would say, what are you crying for? And that's an automatic shutdown. And I'm going, how did that make you feel? When I've said, like, what are you crying for? And from my perspective, I'm going, what is the problem? What are you crying for? But by me actually going, what are you crying for? That's actually telling them to shut down, that their emotions aren't valid. and they're not free to express them either. So then when you then tap into the fear aspect, like, well, there's your kids, and you're just kind of go, what are you crying for? They then become emotionally unavailable. Or they've got the potential to become emotionally unavailable, and that's all fear driven. And I think so many of our masks, they're kind of stitched together by fear of failure, fear of rejection. I've even got a fear of being too much. So even when I'm speaking, like, I've been told that I'm too direct.
Yeah.
And I keep having a laugh with people, and I'm saying it's the shots that's coming out in me. I'm from a small mining town, and like they're quite direct, and I think the Scottish accent. So I always struggled, and even in my jobs, based on even just how I spoke, I had a fear of actually speaking in case I was too much. Yeah. What fears have shaped your choices or kept you in old identities then, Anastasia?
Oh, I had a very similar experience, first and foremost, that you shared. My mom would say exactly the same thing to me. And I've always felt like I was too much, like I was too emotional, which made me close down. I actually closed down my emotions. And it's up until I did some energy work back when I was 27 already, did my floodgate of emotions open up. And I was like, whoa, what are these? I have emotions. And for the first time, I'm not even joking, since childhood, I could feel emotions again, because I was so closed down. I was so numb. And because I was so numb, I was living on this autopilot all the time, because I didn't really feel what was happening in my body. I didn't really understand the impact that certain situations were having on me. And I think my fears were always there, but when I start to feel my emotions, my fears turns into extreme anxieties that I've never learned how to handle, because I've kind of lived through life having a experience of fear in a somatic way, like in my body would tense up, I would get like increased heart rate, but I never felt the emotional sensation of it. And if you've never had the experience, it's probably very hard to comprehend what that might even feel like. But let's put it that way. Before, the fear of rejection, for me personally, like when I was at university, it would just be this exhilarating energy. When I feel my emotions, it became extreme anxiety and made me want to hide. So in a sense, closing our emotions down is like a survival mechanism. It protects us from experiencing fears in the visceral way and still kind of being able to go through life, half a human, yes, but at the same time, you're still kind of able to be high achieving and productive and getting things done and being in the front of people, right? But not really feeling. And as soon as you connect to the body, you realize that, whoa, like now I have to really get through and deep into my emotions to come out of the other side. I can't avoid these things any longer. And that's been my biggest realization. I had all the fears you can imagine. I just didn't feel them. When I start to feel them, so much anxiety. I'm still learning how to regulate my nervous system when they arise and not allow them in life, now that I feel them so viscerally in my body.
Yeah, and that's a nice way to put it as well. It's the feeling. And I think, like, in the work that we do, Anastasia, we speak around about your being in your masculine, your flight or flight, or your distorted masculine, like you're overachieving, overdoing, surviving. And then obviously your feminine wound, you're not able to actually, because you're so like tuned into that emotion, or that energy, it actually stops you from addressing what it is that's really going on. So even in the energy work where we're talking about balancing out the masculine and the feminine energy, it's not just about all the juicy stuff and the really nice stuff and the creativity that starts to flow. It's actually the process of that you're hitting on some of these old wounds that your masculine energy has shoved down to the bottom of the pit, that it's not been able to surface in order for you to get the awareness to start the process of emotional regulation, if you like.
And I just wanted to add, exactly that. And when I was not feeling my emotions, there were just the sensations in my body. What I would still do is I would use all sorts of addictive behaviors to distress myself, and also I was stuck in patterns for years. I had eating disorder, I had all sorts of other addictions, and I couldn't come out of them. So yes, it might seem like, oh, it's easier for us not to feel because then I don't have to deal with it. But actually what that doesn't allow you to do is actually move forward in life. It keeps you stuck in the same circular patterns, and you're just you're unaware of what they are. But as soon as I actually started to feel, yes, it was tough, and I had to face a lot of the things, learn to regulate my emotions, my nervous system, but I've come out of these things. I've healed my eating disorder, I've healed all these other things as a result of this, and I've changed dramatically as a human because I had to learn to see myself for who I was and face the darkness, the fear within myself. Yes, I feel deeply, and yes, sometimes I go for like even depression or anxiety on a small scale, which I think are absolutely normal emotions, by the way, part of life.
They are.
Depression, anxiety is something wrong. There's nothing wrong with you experiencing these things. What's challenging is when we get stuck in them because we define them. We have a story about them, right? That they're bad, that they're wrong, which keeps us pushing them away, making them feel that they're bad, that something's wrong with me. I'm unhealthy, I have mental health issues, and these stories perpetuate us being stuck in these emotions. But when we can actually see them for what they are and realize these are just like flags, they're waving at us, hey, something's out of alignment. You have a belief system that's super negative, so you're thinking this really disempowering thoughts about your life. You're putting yourself in a victimhood, you're fearing something that's not really true. You're playing small, you're not seeing your value. Hey, wake up. That's all our emotions are trying to do, just show us what's still out of alignment within ourselves that we can shift and change to step into our full power. I think that's the value of emotions.
And that's actually powerful as well, because when you're tapping into your divine masculinity, and by the way, there's masculine and feminine energy in everyone, that's there to protect you, not imprison you. But there are people that do become imprisoned, like you say, through just being attached to the repetitiveness of the story that they keep telling themselves to keep them stuck because it feels safe. So even when you're coming in to do some of the things that we're doing, you've got this fear of rejection. I feel like, and it's just through your body's innate ability to just really try, and what you're masquerading, I feel like, imprisonment as protection. That's what you're doing. And I think for me, a way that I've really started to be able to get in tune with whether it's right for me or wrong for me, or whether it's a yes or a no, is actually simply just to connect to my womb space and my heart, which are two of the feminine power centers that I speak around. And then you actually just ask your body, is this my story? Does this serve me? Does this empower me? Is this disempowering me? And actually listening to the cues of the universe that's inside of you. Because as you say as well, like when these things pop up, they're popping up for a reason, and it's something that just needs your intention, not attention, your intention. So Anastasia, there's something that I kind of touched on there. And just now you're actually running a challenge, and it's the rejection challenge, which I find really quite funny, right? Because see, rejection for me, it's never really bothered me at all. And my whole entire life, because I learned at a very young age to ask for what I was wanting. And I would always ask for 100% of what I want 100% of the time, but always be prepared to hear no. So the challenge that you're running just now, if you can share a little bit of the energy, if you like, that's behind that. So why create that rejection challenge?
Well, I mean, the first experience for me of rejection was in really early childhood. And I think I've been very aware of this. So when I first started my first business, it was the number one reason why I couldn't get it off the ground, because I was so afraid to sell. I was so afraid to put myself out there. I was so afraid to hear no, especially when you work on an idea, you have vision, you have passion. And it feels like your ego is at stake. Like your truest, most vulnerable self is being judged by how somebody receives that idea and how quickly it takes off. So it took me a long time to realize that the reason why I couldn't create a successful business was of rejection. And when I finally started to put myself out there and detach my ego from my business, I started to make offers to people. I started to sell. I got confident speaking on camera. I got confident sharing vulnerable content, and my business took off. And I realized, like, whoa, like, so what really separates someone who's successful in their life and able to like achieve things that they desire and somebody who's not is simply the extent to which they're willing to put themselves out there, knowing that the results might not come straight away, knowing that someone might judge them and reject them and literally laugh at what they're doing, have different opinions, knowing that they might offer this best thing that they've ever created to somebody and somebody might say no, and knowing that that can be an experience that can be prolonged for a certain period of time until you have the confidence, the skill set, you've learned the marketing, etc. Right? It's like willingness to put yourself on the line and not use lack of response, lack of yes as evidence that you're not good enough. That's a very powerful place to be in. But then what happened recently is and I thought I got it figured out. You know, I was like, I'm fine. I'm not afraid of rejection. And then I realized there was this next level. And the next level was something else.
Because it always is.
Always the next level. So when you say you're not afraid of rejection, I mean, I bet there's an edge for you too. We all have an edge, you know? And I think for me, my edge was I recognized that there was a deeper, more powerful mission that I was here for. Something that was much more edgy, and another identity that I was still not fully embodying. This identity was fearless and bold, and she not only asked for what she wanted, but she asked knowing that she was so worthy of it, that she deserved to be in every single room with people who are further ahead than her because she's just as powerful, just as wonderful. The identity who knew she was worthy of having income, you know, wealth that really felt abundant to her, that she deserved to show up in her rawest, most authentic self online and share the vulnerable truth, regardless of whether someone might judge her or laugh or cancel her online. I knew that that's who I wanted to be, and yet I was still playing small. And I decided to do this challenge in order to put myself out there and shift my identity. Because when we are asking ourselves to do something bold every single day, naturally it rewires our nervous system, right? Naturally, it makes us feel less afraid of those situations. So I started to do really, really bold dares and asks every single day. I went into a shop. I asked for free plants. I asked for a free car wash. I asked to be featured in a business magazine. I just called them up, asked them. I called up Edinburgh University and asked them to teach a lecture. I messaged my mentor and asked her to promote my challenge. I've done some really wild, really out there things. And the craziest thing, I got so many yeses that it blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, I hacked the matrix. Like, what if we ask in life? What if we just ask confidently without caring? And the opportunity that came from this, I mean, not only did my identity shift dramatically, like I feel so much more powerful than ever before. And I was already a pretty confident person, but all the opportunities that come as a result of daring to act. And that's what this challenge is about. And I think no matter where you are in life, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're not an entrepreneur, you're already making money, you're still starting out, or you're already a millionaire, like it doesn't matter. There's always the edge for everyone.
Could you I like that. The edge. I like that. Could you do me a favor, Anastasia? Could you pass over your link to the challenge? And even for people as well, what could people who are not necessarily on an entrepreneurial journey get from partaking in the challenge? Is it the benefit of building that confidence? How do they strip it back so that it's not so much in a business context? It's just something that could potentially help them in their day-to-day life.
Yeah. I mean, the challenge itself, the asks are not business related, you know, the simple ask from like going, knocking on your neighbor's door and asking to borrow the dog to asking for a free coffee.
I wish someone would come and ask for Lena. That would be amazing. It would be funny to watch as well because she's a pillar.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people say, yeah, sometimes people are dreaming that you come and ask them those things. And I think, I mean, the confidence, yes, of course, you'll become unstoppable in life. And you begin to play with life. Life becomes playful experience. I think this awkwardness, especially in the UK, and people are super awkward and embarrassed by tiniest little things. I think that awkwardness and embarrassment around asking, around what might someone think about me if I ask, are they thinking I'm a crazy person because I just knocked on their door and asked to borrow their dog? I think all of that just starts to disappear, and that serves anybody in their life, because if you're afraid of judgment, if you still care what other people think about you, if you're still kind of like looking over your shoulders when you're like walking somewhere, like wondering, oh, what might that person say? Oh, like you missed your turn and you're too embarrassed to turn around and go the right way because what would people think about me? Like, if that is still within you, like that's how it's going to serve you. It's going to rewire your nervous system over time, but gently, in a very trauma-informed way. Because part of the challenge is also for sessions where we're going to help people reprogram their mindset and their stories around rejection as well, and their belief systems and their energy as well. So it is a very comprehensive, coherent process of one, inspiring your brain, but also taking actions. Those actions, that's what really anchors this new identity in and really rewires your brain in a very practical way. And I think that's going to be game changer for anyone, who joins, really.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And since I was a child, like my friends used to laugh at me because I used to chat up and ask for dinner. I used to chat doors and ask for dinner, not knowing the consequence of that or how that looked. But I was young back then. But my friends have always said to me, like, Lindsay, you would get a piece and jam at MD's door. But I'll tell you something as well. What rippled through everything that you were saying there was, for me, it's the energy that's behind the actual fear of the rejection. For me, I'm going, what's the worst that somebody could do? Like, say no?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then you can have a giggle together and be like, is this a weird ask? Like, have a laugh about it together. Like, we don't play enough with each other. And sometimes that catches people off guard when we can just laugh and play and ask something really audacious, really bold. And people like,
it's fun.
Yeah, they're like, what?
There needs to be more fun. There needs to be, because they're not expecting it either. So you actually catch them off guard to go, what?
Like, you can make them like, what? Like, people can do this? They can just knock on my door and ask to borrow my dog? Like, that's life. Anything can happen.
So funny. But I think for me as well, is like the energy that ripples through that is that when you're actually like, when rejection no longer has power over you, it's when it no longer has the power, when you're facing that head on, like the world's really your oyster. What's wrong with a couple of no's along the way? And we're going to be coming to a close just about now. But before I close this off, so we're going to share Anastasia's link to the challenge. And I think people have got an issue as well with like the word selling. Do you want to know what? All we can do is actually position with people what's available. It's up to you whether you want to do it or not. If it resonates with you, if it aligns with you, then do it. But I'll tell you something as well, like, see, when you get up and you wake up in the morning, like, you step into you first and foremost every single day, unabridged, unapologetically, you. If you put yourself first, then the rest kind of just takes care of itself. But along this journey that I've been doing, I've just followed like all the wee nuggets. And I'll tell you something, Anastasia, see, if I cared one iota about what anybody thought of me, I wouldn't be sitting here having this podcast with you. I'd still be in my 9-to-5 job and doing what I've done for 18 years. There was such a rude awakening within me that ignited this rawness, this like level of, and I'm like, fuck me, like, there's so much more that people need to know. And I'm going to go out and fly the flag, whether that makes me seem off my rocker or not. I actually really don't care, right? So I've actually created a soul map. So it's an energetic blueprint that it's really just, it acts as a portal into your truth, and it's truth that you might have forgotten or you wouldn't have known. So I've called this a soul coded cartography. I can't even pronounce it properly. Cartography. It still wants to be coming out in all the hours. So what I do is I ripple in, I kind of put in to a soul soup, if you like, all your astronomy, your human design, and there's some other things that are in there as well. When I started to look into my soul and my soul's journey, it actually allowed me to see myself. Like it resonated with me so much. Like there's so much knowledge and self-awareness that's to be gained for this, that you actually just finally feel seen. So I'm offering two options. There's two PDFs. There's one that's a 3-page and there's one that's a 12 to 15 page. The 3-page PDF is a soul glimpse, and that is £33. And the 12 to 15th page in-depth report, alongside rituals, affirmations, and a playlist, is £111 as well. So if anyone's interested in that, if you can type in the comments SoulSip, or you can DM me, you can reach out separately. So Anastasia, before we go, is there anything else at all that you would like to leave for the listeners?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what you just said. I think this is the beginning of the journey for a lot of people. Sometimes because they're so afraid of rejection, they don't even dare to find out their truth, right? Their soul's mission. So I feel like that's the first step, is being willing to discover that perhaps the life that you feel so comfortable living is not the life that you're meant to be living here, that you actually come here to do much bigger things. And it's just that willingness to say, hold on a minute, like maybe I'm not always going to feel so afraid.
Yeah, let's go explore it as well. Let's go explore it. The Soulful Explorer, that brings me on to my Soulful Explorer. My book gets available on Amazon and all good bookstores as well. Anastasia, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining the call or the podcast, and no doubt there are other collaborations as well that we'll be having. So everyone keep your eye out. I'll share some stuff on social media as well. But for now, I don't know if there's any comments that's there, if anyone's asked anything. But I'll reach back out to anyone. If you have anything, please reach out. So thank you very much and good night.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Thanks, Anastasia. Thank you.